but I have one en route.
Good morning, everybody. It's red now, so it means we're live. We're so glad that you have joined us this morning. Welcome to the second Sunrise WEIRDCast. Clearly, we're not in Kyle's backyard like we were last week. We are now at my kitchen table, so if you've never been to my house, welcome. We're glad that you're here. We are going to hopefully do a lot of the same things we did last week and try and do them better. For instance, we're sideways like we're supposed to be this week, which is a big improvement over how we started last week. And instead of vertical, which was a little unfortunate. And we've also added some other pieces that hopefully will be good for you. And so I just want to introduce the people that we've got here. Just like last week, I've got with me Kyle Walker, who's right here with me. On my right, you guys know Pastor Kimberly. She's right here. And our special guest today is Yolani Hernandez, who works for Community Care, and she is the person that runs the clinic 2 times a week at Sunrise and then 1 time a week at our Abbotsville location. And we are so happy to have her here with us because she's been front lines with the COVID thing this week. And so we're going to hear a little bit from her about what that looks like. And it's just awesome to have her be a part of this morning. So a couple things as we get started that I want to kind of point out. And if you were here last week, you already know these things. We really want you to interact. I've already seen a couple good mornings and things like that, comments on this page. We would love to have as many comments as possible. Last week we had 210 comments by the time we closed down. We want to blow that number away. So here's a couple things you can do. First, go and text or message somebody that you know that's a Sunriser that's not on right now. Ask them, are you online? Because I'm online. You want to join me online and be a part of this. It's like the easiest possible way to invite somebody to church that you've ever had. So go ahead and just invite somebody right now. But the second thing is comment away, because what we're going to do is, as we go throughout this, we're going to look for the best comments. And at the end of this service today, we're going to be reading the best 3 comments. So if your comment was awesome, you're going to be able to hear your comment reread by one of us later in our time together. And so go ahead and put any good comment you can think of, like I really like what Mark's hair is doing on the side here. I really think that Kimberly looks like she hates someone right now, or like whatever comment you want to make. Like what kind of name is Yolani? Like those kind of comments we could really appreciate. We would love to hear those.
Just us?
I mean,
I'm bigger than y'all.
Yeah, I'm scared of Kyle. So give us some good comments. We want to read them because, the hilarity of the Sunrise community is such that on a normal Sunday, we would be hearing bizarre things from you, from the audience, that are inappropriate and hilarious. But here, we can't really hear you because we're talking to my kitchen. And so we would love to hear those comments come online and be able to hear those. So we're going to start today just by asking some questions to each of the folks here. And I'm going to ask them in a minute. But before I do that, the last thing that I want to introduce is what we did last week, which is our Sunrise WEIRDCast karaoke. And so last week we let you suggest whatever song you wanted to, and you guys totally screwed us over and picked a song that we didn't know, and we did a really poor job. So this week we're better prepped. While we're talking, I'm going to be posting 4 songs on a poll, and you're going to see the poll pop up on your screen, and you'll be able to pick one of the 4 songs. We picked some awesome songs this week to choose between. One of them is from last week's that somebody suggested, which is God is Bigger Than the Boogeyman from VeggieTales, which would be a great thing to sing. The second one is Oh Happy Day, like the Sister Act, Oh Happy Day. We'd love to sing that one together, and it's echoey, so we know how to do it. But then the 2 other ones that we're going to put on the screen for our pop songs for fun would be, which are COVID themed, are Staying Alive by the Bee Gees, which we're all trying to do right now. And the last one, which is for those of us who are extroverts and need some people, My Heart Will Go On from Titanic, from Celine Dion. And so those are your 4 singing options. I'm going to post them on the screen. You're going to be able to vote by clicking one of those 4 options. If you want to make a case in the comments for why you're picking the song you're picking, go for it. Try to sway the vote, whatever you need to do. But we will, not only us, but everybody else who's in the house right now, we're going to do that karaoke at the end of this time. And so we would love to sing one of those. Whichever one you want us to sing and sing very, very poorly, we would love to do that later in this time together. And so the first question I'm going to ask to you guys, because you guys, I haven't let you talk yet. We're going to try and start with a question every time. And my question for you guys this time is, what is the thing that you could do before we were all quarantined that you can't do now? So Kyle, I'm going to start with you. What's the thing that you most miss that you could do that before this quarantine that you can't do now?
Hugs. I miss hugs. I'm a big hugger, as everybody knows. I'm like a master level hug expert, and I cannot hug people. And my son and my husband are done with it. So that would have to be the biggest, problem that I have seen.
Now, do you get a ticket for hugging right now? Is that how that works?
I don't think you get a ticket, but you get a lot of really weird looks. You know, like even here, as Katie was lysoling the doorknob after I entered,
She'll
Katie,
do that.
yeah, Katie's definitely happy about the hug thing, and it reminded me that I'm actually very sad about the hug thing. So we can like elbow bump later.
It's called the CDC. It's called the CDC bump.
I mean, we're way closer than 6 feet.
We are way closer than 6 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing none of us are working with people all the time. And so, Kimberly, what is it that you've missed since we went to this new reality?
I miss eggs the most. I just want to go to a grocery store and buy them, but they're not there. Do you have eggs? Do you want to share with me? Huh? I've already stole some from Katie today, so.
Now, they can't stand that close to you, so would they need to
Oh,
toss them to you?
yeah.
Okay, toss
Maybe
them.
hard-boiled. No,
Hard-boiled.
that won't work because then I can't put them in anything. I'll catch them. It'll be fine. We'll try it.
All right, Yolani, how about you? What's something that you miss?
Two things. I miss buying rice and not having to fight over it. I don't know, people just went wild with rice and beans. And the second thing that I miss are my patients from Sunrise and from Mobile and Street. I miss all of my patients. I can't wait to go back to normalcy after all this kind of blows over.
This is a good question that Kyle added on, which I think is a good question. What is one thing that you actually do appreciate about being in quarantine? You had a thought on this, so go ahead.
Well, yeah, so Introverts Unite, I'm extremely happy. I really don't care for people as a whole. And so being able to be in my little bubble and my little cocoon is awesome. Also, my son is happier than I've ever seen him, not being overstimulated by the world. I feel like the earth is healing. I feel like people are have been taken back about 4 or 5 decades and playing board games and talking to each other, and anyway, I think it's awesome. I mean, the solitary part of it, not the sickness part of it.
Does your family feel the same way?
I don't.
New poll question going up on the video, specifically for David and Elias. Do you appreciate being quarantined with your mother/wife?
Yeah.
Yolani, anything good about what you're doing now?
I'm not really in quarantine, I guess, per se. But my kids are, and I've come home to several of my mugs decorated and painted. And my plates decorated and painted, and they've built entire cities out of cardboard.
Aww.
So yes, they've really learned to go back 60 years and do what they do best. Also, Frozen 2 is on Disney.
I've already been asked to watch Frozen 2 5 times in the last couple days, so I've figured out ways to suggest other movies. That's a skill that I've come up with. I was gonna say, I think I was telling Yolani that I actually think the best thing about her new thing is she's got this awesome new look that she is rocking. She got to be on KUT News this week, and she was pictured in this head to toe blue scrub face mask welder.
It looks like a welder's helmet. I
Yeah.
get welder's hair now.
She looks like the people from E.T. is who she looks. And those people from E.T. gave me nightmares. That was the hardest part about E.T. for me, is I got nightmares from the people that put his house in quarantine and put him in the freezer and all that kind
So
of
this
stuff.
is really good for you right now.
Yeah, no, I can't sleep, and mostly I have Yolanda to thank for that.
I can do it after the quarantine.
Yeah, okay. How about anything rocking for you since the quarantine started?
I don't know me specifically, but I think that for a lot of people, especially in the United States, we are a go, go, go society. And so for us to have to take a step back and reflect on our own lives, reflect on our families, get rest that we haven't had in years, I think it's a good thing. Obviously, the disease is not, but taking a moment and realizing.
Thanks for pointing that out. The disease is
Yeah.
not a good thing.
Not a good
We
thing.
appreciate that.
Not a good thing. Caveat.
Yeah. For those of you who were concerned that it was a good thing,
It's not.
We've now cleared that up. So my good thing is actually lead me into what I'm supposed to share. So we're each going to share something about kind of the fields that we're working in. But the good thing for me has been, some of you know that like pretty much all of the homeless service providers in Austin more or less shut down when this happened. And it was a choice for us whether we wanted to shut down the navigation center. Do we want to keep trying to help people? Do we want to find a safe way to do this? And it took us a few days to try to find a safe way to do it, and we figured out, mostly with Yolani's help, tried to figure out a safe way to do it, and we think we did, and it's been really awesome because we've had more volunteers show up than we ever had before. We've had more stuff come in than we've ever had before. We've had foundations partner with us. We've had other churches partner with us, and it's been really, really cool. To see. So we've got masks and we've got gloves and we've got all that kind of stuff, and some of that's been provided by some of our partners, but also just food. So if you follow our Facebook page, it's crazy. We are now getting either 100 cheeseburgers a day from McDonald's or 100 chicken sandwiches from Chick-fil-A every single day, which is unreal. Like the first day somebody showed up with 100 burgers from McDonald's, I was kind of like, this is some sort of thing that I only saw in a nightmare at some point in my life. But at some point I kind of want to put all the burgers on the ground and do a burger snowman, in the burgers. But I feel like that would be unsanitary. So anyways, we are going. And I want to say the other cool thing about doing homeless work the way that we are now, which is non-contact and keeping our social distance, is that I'm not allowed to go and actually interact with people, so I have to have other ways. And so I actually took my way with me today, so that you can see this amazing tool that I have to use now. It's a megaphone, and so I get to use this every day, and it's fantastic. Get off my grass. I see what you're doing over there. And then if people don't want to leave when we're done, I've got this feature. Oh, sorry if you're watching with earbuds in and I just made your ears bleed. Community care would be happy to help you out. So we get to do really fun stuff and interact with a lot of people. And this is weird thing. I'm sure Yolani, you feel this way too. Like when you're kind of the last people doing anything, it's risky, but it's also strangely fun. We're kind of at the end of the world right now. She disagrees. Okay.
She look at her face.
But I mean, it creates some camaraderie with the people that you're working with, because you're all in this together, and you're there's the potential that everybody's looking at you and being like, you guys are nuts. Why did you put clothes on today and go to work? That's crazy. It's interesting to be with people that are willing to kind of step out like that and to kind of be in solidarity with them. So that's what we've been doing. If you do want to support what we're doing, I wouldn't necessarily suggest signing up to volunteers. We have lots of volunteers, but we do need supplies of food because we do run low on food, especially now that all the restaurants that we were getting food from have closed. The other thing I was going to point out too, and this is probably a benefit for myself, but also anybody who's working with Austin Public Health like Yolani, is Austin Disaster Relief Network, ADRN, is running a drive right now to basically find masks and gloves in people's houses. So if you didn't know, a lot of these folks don't have enough gloves or masks to make it through the time that they're supposed to work, and those of us who are doing the kind of work we're doing also don't have enough of that stuff, and so people are being forced to reuse things and all that sort of thing. And so if you're cleaning up your house, because we're all cleaning our houses during this time, another added benefit of the quarantine. If you find masks, if you find gloves, if you find bleach wipes or sanitizing wipes, that kind of stuff, we need them. But also Austin Public Health through Austin Disaster Relief Network is running a drive for them right now. They will get them to them. They'll get them to the people who need them the most. Because the reality is, without those, a lot of the folks like Yolani who are on the front lines are just not going to have access to that stuff. And it's weird that private citizens are being asked to give things to healthcare workers, but that's the situation that we're in. And so that would be a great way to help out if you find that kind of stuff in your house, or if you had an elderly person in your house that you cared for a while and you have some of those supplies, first aid supplies, that kind of stuff. The things that are not in stores. Those are the kind of things we need. So that would be a great way to help out, either through Sunrise, through ADRN, through community care, however you want to get involved with that.
Del Medical School is also doing a mass drive.
Yeah, Del Medical School is doing a mass drive. They're also doing a tent drive, which is cool. Tim Mercer, who's one of our doctors that we work with, is kind of heading that up, trying to get as many tents for people who are homeless to be able to quarantine if they need to quarantine. And so if you've got any access to those kind of things, we can find you connections for those. So that's kind of what Sunrise is doing. I'm going to invite Kyle, if you want to talk a little bit about maybe last week we talked about like an online resource for 12 steps. But a lot of people have been kind of building their own approaches to 12 steps, which is really cool. And before I let her talk, I do want to say also welcome on behalf of myself, on behalf of Kyle, and everybody from Sunrise to all the Austin Recovery community, because Austin Recovery is now going to be streaming this at their facility. And so we're so excited about you guys being able to join us and be a part of this, just like they are when they get driven to Sunrise, but now to actually have us on the big screen, I imagine our faces look beautiful on a big screen, especially mine. And so welcome to those from Austin Recovery. And speaking of Austin Recovery, Kyle, you want to talk a little bit about what does 12 steps look like in this new reality?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Hi, Austin Recovery family. Hi, Sunrise family. Hi, Here family. I definitely last week, I really believe that those of us in recovery are kind of the best positions during this time, mainly because, I heard somebody say recently, because we're used to fighting an invisible disease. And we also have a lot of tools, that we're able to use in our recovery. The first of which I have found great comfort in page 68 of the Big Book. It's what I consider my fear page. And it just reminds me that, that there is a power greater than me that's in charge of all of this, and it takes the pressure off, which I'm very thankful for. I have control of very little. But also, I want everyone to know that there are a lot of private groups that are popping up on Facebook for each individual 12-step community. I'm collecting information on those groups, and this is the way that we're kind of taking heed of the tradition that says that, we will not, basically our anonymity. So anyhow, if you have any questions about joining, people online that you would normally see at meetings in person, there's a much more, community feel if you're seeing people online that you normally would hug, and you get to see them in person. The alumni, Austin Recovery alumni, we have a closed group, same with 1313, same with there's a South Austin AA online. There are several groups that have now kind of closed themselves, but you can easily be invited and get Zoom meeting information. And it really is, it's like the Brady Bunch. I mean, it's so weird. It's like, it's cool though, because you can get as dressed up as you want. But basically you just see everybody's faces, and it's absolutely the same reason, the same purpose. There's a singularness of purpose, and we're there to just make sure that we're all doing okay. So that would have to be kind of the big difference that I've seen in the recovery community over the last week. And it's really neat. So I would highly suggest that you send me a message, or send a message to someone that you know from a meeting. And more than likely, there's going to be a Zoom meeting that you can plug into.
Very cool. And so we're also, like I said, we're so honored to be joined by Yolani, who is just doing amazing work during this time. It's really cool that I get to hand out hamburgers, but to actually be one of the people that's in line testing people, and being on the front line of seeing what happens, and I we've always at Sunrise, we've always appreciated Yolani's heart for people who have just people who have medical concerns that a lot of other medical professionals even don't want to touch, don't want to hang out with, because they're not the kind of people they want to be around, or it's not the classiest kind of healthcare you can do. I'm just always impressed with the way community care works, and Yolani's just been an amazing presence for us at Sunrise, not just as somebody who does medical work, but also just as somebody who loves people. And so she's Sunrise through and through, even if she's not somebody that you oftentimes see on our stage. And so I'm going to invite her to talk a little bit about what it is that she's doing, because I just think it would be interesting for everybody here, what is actually being done on the testing front. What's it like to be in a line where you're deciding who gets tested, who doesn't, when you've only got a few tests, that kind of thing. And I also asked her maybe like what has she learned a week in from doing testing that maybe she didn't know before she started. So I'm going to turn it over to Yolani. Yolani, you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on?
Thanks, Mark. Well, it's definitely uncharted territory. Nothing like this has ever really been done before. And we started the first drive-through here in Austin. The whole process is there's a lot of triage that goes through it. You have to decide, well, we use criteria based from the CDC guidelines and also Austin Public Health, but because there are so little tests, we have to decide who meets criteria and who doesn't, who has to go home with isolation precautions. But when we first started, before we even started, I just thought, okay, this is not going to be this. There's a plan, this should be smooth sailing. Yeah, there are going to be a couple of hiccups here and through, but at least there was a plan. Well, that kind of all went out the window because criteria changes almost every single day. So that's kind of what we learned through the whole week is we have to kind of roll with the punches and make changes where we need to. One of the things that I learned through this whole thing is that there is a lot of fear, not just on the people that are coming through the line, but also on my end and on the other healthcare provider end. I fear that I'm gonna take this home to my family or spread this through my patients. So the way we put on personal protective equipment and take it off is critical. And because there's such a shortage on this equipment, we have to make sure that whatever is reusable has to be cleaned thoroughly and reused again. But then there's also the thing where we have to be very resourceful with what we do have. We have so little tests that are distributed to us every day. Not just us, but the whole city gets a small amount of tests. So unfortunately not everybody gets tested. Ideally, everybody should, but unfortunately not everybody will because of the amount of tests that we have. We really just have right now where we know it's community spread. So we're just focusing on where are the hot pockets or the vectors within the city. And so I think it's hard for people to understand when they come through the line that we have little tests. And I understand you're feeling ill, you're concerned, not just for your health, but also for the health of those around you, and then what's to come in terms of the economy, like if you have to take off for 2 weeks, those type of things. But we just kind of have to do not just what's best for us, but what's best for everybody else at the moment. So it's been hard for me, but also for everybody else, and we're all kind of in this together. Hopefully we'll be able to get through it, and then we'll learn a lot from it.
Yeah, one of the hardest things for me is that Yolani usually clips my toenails for me at the Thursday clinic, so I'm really frustrated that I've had to share her with all these other people. And my toenails are getting real long, y'all. They're getting real long.
That's disgusting. Why would you say that?
Because she has clipped people's toenails in my office before. And it's like, that's a real thing.
I have not yours.
Why?
I have to use shears.
Why Yolani always does the gross things in my office at the clinic, I don't understand. Like, I think she could do them in a lot of other places.
Because she knows that no one will ever find them.
I just, like, if there's a gross thing, she's always like, hey, Mark, I need to use your office. Like we have restrooms, we have, other office, we have Kimberly's office, like, why do you gotta do the gross things? She's like, can I have them put their butt right up on your desk? No, we're not gonna do that. Thank you, Luan. We're so grateful for you being here. Kimberly is here, and Kimberly, do you want to tell people a little bit? Last week, by the way, she was out raising money for Sunrise out at our sister church in Stephenville, so she wasn't just abandoning us on our first broadcast, but we're glad that she's here. And Kimberly, would you like to tell us a little bit about how people can still be involved at Sunrise, and what are some ways even that we're going to start rolling out new ways to be involved at Sunrise?
Yes, absolutely. So kind of going off what Kyle said, the 12-step programs are doing, we are going to be doing that at Sunrise. If you are in a small group, I hope that y'all are still meeting over Zoom. If you're not, you should let me know so I can yell at your leader I think all of them are doing it. Mark, are you doing it?
We're doing it.
All right. But we're going to also start new groups. And we're going to have just a big open group for our Sunrise community and for people who maybe aren't a part of the Sunrise community but need human contact. Because just because we are quarantined doesn't mean we have to be isolated. That is the worst thing you can do for yourself, is to cut yourself off from talking to people. So we, on Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, it'll be posted. We're going to have an open Zoom meeting. It's going to be posted on our Facebook. You just click the link and add yourself to it, and we can have up to 100 people. So we want 100 people. We want to see your face. We want to talk to you. We want to see how you're doing. We'll have discussion questions and also just a time of fellowship to remember that we are not alone in this. And then throughout the week, if we get a lot of interest, we will set up smaller groups for y'all to connect and maybe actually join a small group when this is over. So we're really excited about that. Also, every Sunday morning, we take offering. And we all do it. We all participate. And we all, because we want to be a part of the kingdom of God. We want to be a part of what God is doing. You can still do that. I know there's not a basket being passed between us because, germs. But you can still donate. So you can go onto the Facebook page that you're already watching. Hey, you're already watching it. And click donate on the Facebook page, and that'll be your offering for the week. Or you can go to sunriseaustin.org, and there is a link, like the three little lines. You click on the menu, and it says donate on there. So you can do it one of those two ways. Also, if you already have a PayPal account set up with us, you can do it there as well.
There's also you can still mail a check in, that's still allowed.
If you are old enough to have checks, we would love to have your checks. Or if you still have cable.
What? Some people have cable. And so, if you truly need to give cash, if you're not, because we have people that are only cash givers, and I actually had somebody just ask a question about giving. We are there from 9 to 1. Yeah. We will probably ask you to do the real safe thing, which is walk up to a table, put the money on the table, and then walk away, or we'll give you an envelope or something like that, because that's kind of how we do our safety procedures right now. But you can bring money up. We're open 9 to 1 every day right now, on weekdays at least, and so we can make that happen. If we need to send Yolani to your house in her full scrubs to get your 50-cent donation, we will do it. So as long as you tip your driver, we're fine. Any other ways that so the announcements for those things we're going to put on the Facebook page?
Yes.
Okay.
They will be posted in the next day or two.
We know you have nothing else going on in your life, so if you could just go ahead and follow us on Facebook, interact with our posts, and figure out how you can get involved with those things. I think it's going to be a really cool opportunity, because number one thing that I get from most Sunrisers as I'm talking to them, calling to see how everybody's doing, is they're like, I miss other people. I miss interacting with other people. We did small group, by the way, the other night. For the first time on Facebook Live on Zoom, and it was so cool. Kyle's in my group, that's why I'm talking to her. One of the cool things about it, though, is that I said at the end of the group, I almost feel like we might just have to do this permanently, because people liked it so much that nobody could use traffic as an excuse, which is the number one small group excuse that everyone uses, and you know who you are.
I was early.
Kyle was early for the first time. She actually didn't even know what time our group started. I had to tell her. But she could show up on time, and
David made dinner.
Yeah, David was making dinner. It was but it's an awesome way to still do small group, and even if you just want to meet up with 2 or 3 friends, like an accountability group or something like that, or if like Kyle the other night asked me if she could use it for a 12-step thing. We have an account for Sunrise. We bought it just for this. If you want to use it, please email Kimberly. We will try to find you a way that you can use it so that you can get access to that. So. Anything else that we need to know, Kimberly?
Well, also, if you are a Sunriser, you know other people who come. And if you think about them throughout the day, text them, email them, call them, see if they are okay. Because a lot of times we forget about people because we don't see them. But if you start to think about that person, it means you need to touch base with them. I believe that's what community is about. So that's all I have.
All right.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay.
You gonna pray for us?
I'm going to pray for us.
Now, there was a really great prayer that was offered last week.
Okay, so I'm going to try to break the record and make 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
7-minute prayer.
Well, see, the thing is, if you do a 6-minute prayer, everyone is really impressed.
Yeah.
And it's like there's that story in the Bible about how Jesus got mad at the person for praying for a long time so that everybody could hear it.
Right.
Which I assume also meant Facebook Live. And
right.
I think I violated that commandment last week.
You did. Yeah.
To be fair,
that was the biggest complaint. The sideways, not a big deal, but that 6
Mark's prayer, many people said it changed their lives in a negative way.
Right,
in a
right.
negative way.
It turned them off of Jesus.
Yes, yeah, okay.
That's not good.
Ouch. Okay. So, why don't you go ahead and pray since you're so good at it? Jeez.
Lord, we come before you today as a community who is separated, but a community that is still strong, a community that is still bound together by you. Lord, we just ask that even though we are quarantined, God, that you would not allow us to be isolated. That if we begin to isolate ourselves, that you would put our name in someone's heart, that they would reach out. God, that we would not be alone, even though we are separated. God, I just pray that for anyone who has come down with this disease, come down with a virus, God, that you would heal them, that you would send your mercy to them. Because, God, we serve someone who is bigger than this world, bigger than any virus could ever be. Lord, we praise you in advance for the good that you will do amongst your people. God, I praise you and I thank you. I thank you for bringing us here today, for allowing us an ability to still talk to people, to still reach people for you. God, because whether we're pastors, whether we work in the health industry, God, whether we're in recovery, it doesn't matter who we are, we still come to you as sinners, as broken people, and you restore us. You restore us, and a part of that restoration is through our relationship with each other. We thank you and praise you for this day. We know that you are still sovereign, and we will depend on that. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Whoa.
Rude.
Just because I pray better than you.
All right, y'all. So I've been the person that's been assigned to talk about the Bible today because that's what we do. This is really fantastic. So we have a camera that's right across, and these fine people are trapped, and Kyle's crawling on the ground to try and. Oh, now Yolani's going to do it. This is great. I think we got your ponytail there, Yolani. Okay. All right. So I just want to say again, welcome to everybody, and we're so glad that you're here. Just to update, I want you to know that we've been watching while you guys have been polling in about what song you want us to do, and right now, God is Bigger Than the Boogeyman, sitting at 36%. But I will say that My Heart Will Go On and Staying Alive are making a pretty decent comeback, and so if you haven't voted yet, make sure that you vote. My favorite comments so far have been related to Kyle because they don't relate to me. And so if you want to post any other comments that are related to other people, you're welcome to.
If she's more popular.
If you want to challenge my wife to get in the karaoke video, you could also do that as a comment. That can be helpful. And so this morning we're going to we've been talking through this series, and Kira did a great job about talking through what it looks like to think about Jesus predicting his own death, and we've been talking about that through this whole series. By the way, it's still Lent. I don't know if anybody remembers it's still Lent, like that's a thing. And we started Lent on Ash Wednesday, and we're heading towards Easter. Who knows if we'll have church before Easter? Probably not. But if we don't, this is just an opportunity to, again, remind you that during Lent, we take the time to think about kind of our own mortality and our own brokenness and how that works. And so if you've committed to doing something, giving something out, or adding something during Lent, this is an opportunity to kind of reflect on how you're doing. If you chose that you were going to give up Facebook for Lent, and then your church decided that they were going to do all of their services via Facebook Live, we sincerely apologize. We did not mean to trip up your spiritual life, but to be fair, the virus did it, not us. And so this morning, we're going to continue on that series that Kira was talking about last week and that we've been talking about in church. And we're going to be talking again about a story about where Jesus predicted his own death and how people dealt with it. And it might be the one, by the way, that most people identify with this concept of Jesus predicting his own death. So we're going to be looking at Mark chapter 8. Mark is the best looking of the Gospels. And so if you would like to join with me, I'm going to be in Mark chapter 8. We're going to be starting at verse 27. And I'm just going to read it. It's not going to be on your screen because even though we have better technology this week, we don't have the technology that does that. If you're looking for that, there's lots of churches that have way fancier bands and pastors and screens than we do. So just click on another Facebook link for that. Here is Mark chapter 8, starting verse 27. It says this: Jesus and his disciples went to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, "Who do people say that I am?" Which I think is interesting because Jesus is supposed to be all-knowing. And he's asking people, who do people say that I am? What have you been hearing? What's the online chatter? What's the hubbub? And so Jesus asks his disciples this, and so the disciples say, some people say you're John the Baptist, some people say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets. What I think is interesting is all those options are people who would have had to come back from the dead. Like nobody was like, people think you're Phil from San Antonio. Like it's not none of these options are the kind of options I would think somebody would be. They're all options of people coming back from the dead. So they knew there was something powerful about him. They knew there was something supernatural about him. And so who do people say that I am? I think it's also interesting. Like that's a question. Like if I asked you right now, like who do your people say that Jesus is? Like who do your people think that he is? Like do they think he's a prophet? Do they think that he's that he's God? Do they think that he's just a nice dude? Do they think that he manipulated a whole bunch of people into giving tithes for 2,000 years? Like who do they think that he is? I think all of us, if we answered for our friends, would have different answers to that question. Who do you think that I am? And so they say John the Baptist, Elijah, some others of the prophets. But what about you? Jesus says. What about you? Who do you say that I am? Which is interesting. It's kind of like, how do you present me? Sometimes I ask my wife, like, what do you say about me to your friends? And then I tell her not to be honest with me because I'm a little worried about what she would say. But you ever think about like how do your friends talk about you to their friends? And that's always kind of an iffy thing. But I always kind of wonder what other people say about me to their friends. What do Sunrisers say to non people who've never met me about Sunrise? What do they say about Pastor Mark and how he does crazy things? And how do you represent yourself to somebody else? It actually kind of pulls you into a whole bunch of codependent kind of like worrisome thought. Who do you say that I am when you talk to other people? Peter, of course, because Peter's like the person who always answers all the questions first and the loudest. He always says, "You are the Messiah." And when he says Messiah, what he means is from the Old Testament. He's talking about the one that God would send to kind of redeem all of Israel and put Israel back on track, to bring Israel back to the glory days. He was the one that would bring them back. And so Peter says, I know that's who you are. That's who I tell people that you are. And then Jesus doesn't even respond other than to say he warned them not to tell anyone about it. Which is, I always think is an interesting part of Jesus' story, how he's constantly telling people not to tell people about what he did. He would heal people and say, shh. He would constantly be telling people that when they figured out something about him, when they finally discovered some truth about who he was, he actually asked them to be quiet. Which I think a lot of us would say is the opposite of what we feel like we're supposed to be doing. A lot of us feel like we're supposed to be constantly posting as many Jesus memes on Facebook as we possibly can to convert, the masses. Or whatever it is that we're supposed to be doing to tell all of our friends about Jesus. Like I just asked you to invite all your friends to this Facebook live cast. But I do think that we as a people oftentimes think it's our job to tell as many people as possible. But I think it's interesting that whenever Jesus does something really revealing, he says, don't tell anyone about it. Because in some ways he's trying to control the spread of what he's talking about. He's trying to get on a timeline that he's supposed to be on rather than a timeline of people getting the word out too quickly and in a way that doesn't hit people the right way. He also didn't want people to just come to him because of what he did. He didn't want people to follow him because he was a great miracle worker. He didn't want people to follow him because what he did was so good. He wanted people to follow him because he was so good. Like he wanted people to follow him for him. He didn't want people to follow him for the things that he did, which I think is very similar to, like, I don't want anybody to follow me because I do really cool things. I want people to like me for me. Like I want people to appreciate me for me. I want people to love me for me. And God in some ways could be a giant blessing dispenser. He could be like a cosmic soda machine if you wanted to, and we could just look at him that way as like a dispenser of goodies. But I don't think that's how God wants us to interact with him. He doesn't want us to love him for the things that he gives us. He wants us to love him for him. And so that's partially why Jesus is going there. But then we go into this. He began to teach the people at the Son of Man, right after this, he began to teach the people that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, pretty much all the religious people, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. So at this point, he's telling them what's going to happen. Like, he is out and out telling them, like, this is what's going to happen. This is the problem that's coming your way. This is the reality of what's going to happen. And for most of them, that would have been very shocking, because I think almost everybody at that time thought that Jesus was going to come through and bring back the glory days of Israel. They were going to become, the country that ruled the world, that Israel would get its rightful place in society. All of their people they'd been fighting with for years would lose their ability to control them. He was going to take down the Romans. He was going to take down the Philistines. Everybody that they fought with for years. That when Jesus finally came to power, he would help take down all those people so that Israel could be, super Israel. They could be the Israel that they've always wanted to be. And when he says, after a little while, I'm going to die and rise again, he's actually kind of dashing all of their dreams that they had for him. And they had all been kind of, scoping out a place to be. It's like all these people, as the presidential candidates are coming through, they're all banking on which presidential candidate they can get behind so that they can get themselves a cabinet spot, or they can get themselves a staff position. So do you pick Biden? Do you pick Bernie Sanders? Do you pick Donald Trump? Like, who do you pick? Because who do you think is going to win? Because if they win, you could get a swank job doing something in a great place. And so these disciples were all about, we think we've picked the right Messiah. There was a lot of people claiming to be the Messiah at the time. They were picking this one because they thought he was the one, and they thought if he came to power, they would all get swank jobs. They would all be the people who were in charge of big parts of the new Jewish kingdom, the new Jewish ruling class. And here he's dashing all their dreams by telling them that he's going to die and rise again. It had to kind of just like boggle their minds. And so he says that, and then he says, then he says, he spoke plainly about this, but then Peter, the very guy who had just said that he was the Messiah, took him aside and began to rebuke him. Now you know that Peter is like forceful and loud, but Peter also apparently is just like super brash, because to pull aside the Son of God and rebuke him, like, you've got to have some pretty large cojones to be able to think about what it means to be the kind of person that pulls him over to the side and says, I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. And so as we see Peter pull him aside and rebuke him, Jesus then responds to Peter. He says, what good is it? He says in verse 33, but when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. Get behind me, Satan, he said. Which is interesting, because Peter is like supposed to be like one of the most important disciples. He's supposed to be the one that is like one of the most valuable. In fact, Peter is the disciple that the popes are now based on. Like, he is the central figure of the early church. He is the most respected, most well-known person in the whole group that was following Jesus. And Jesus literally calls him the devil. Jesus calls him Satan. Not because he did anything bad, not because he was undermining Jesus' ministry. Jesus had somebody in his group of disciples that was going to betray him to death, and he didn't call that guy Satan. He called the guy Satan who asked him to stop talking about his own death. And he says after that, he says, you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. So what is it about what Peter said that was so screwed up? And why is it something that we would say? I think it might be something that I would say. Peter just honestly didn't like what Jesus had to say. Like, he honestly just didn't want it to be true. And it's funny. I was watching Saturday Night Live last night, and I turned it on, and I didn't know if it was going to be a new episode or an old episode. It was actually an episode from right at the beginning of 2020, and it was like just before the coronavirus had hit the United States. And it was interesting to see how they were dealing with the coronavirus like a month before it hit the United States. And as they're dealing with it, they're kind of joking about it. Like, they called it the Wuhan virus, and they were like, this is going to be, China, you're not doing a very good job with this. And little did they know that it would like completely crash our economy and crash our lives and completely set the world back. And I think that sometimes when we see things coming down the pike, when we see things that are imminent, and we see things that are probably going to happen to us, our first response, just like everybody's first response in a grief situation, is to deny it. Like, we don't want to deal with it, and because I don't want to deal with it, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm pretty sure I still have some friends on Facebook, although they're dwindling, that are still saying it's a hoax. The whole thing's a hoax. So everybody who's out there in their scrubs and trying to test people, they're all part of the hoax. It's all part of the hoax. But I think most of us have realized at this point it's not a hoax. Like, this is a real thing. But there's something in me that wants to deny it too. Like, there's something in me that wants to say, well, maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and this will all be a dream. Maybe I'll wake up tomorrow and this will all just have been fake. Maybe tomorrow I can bring my kid to school and you know, it'll all just be normal again. There's something in me that wants that to be true. And usually when the thing you want to be true and the thing that is actually reality don't match up, it's because something in your heart is telling you that you have a desire to have the world a different way than it is. And I think that in this situation, Peter sees something that he doesn't like, and his response is, I'm not going to deal with that because I don't want to. And unfortunately, we come across situations like that all the time, including right now in our world. And it's honestly the trouble with Jesus, because if you think about Jesus, like, Jesus had a lot of things to say, and I think most of us can get behind like 90% of the things Jesus had to say. It's like the 10% of things Jesus had to say that really get us freaked out and get us like a little bit twitchy. And so if you're the kind of person that listens to Jesus, actually reads what he says, there's probably going to be something you're going to disagree with that he says over time. And usually it's the things that have to do with things that cost you something. Like, everybody's on board with Jesus until someone passes the offering plate. Like, everybody's on board with Jesus until he asks you to do something. Like, everybody's on board with Jesus being nice to people until I have to be nice to people. Then I'm done. I think a lot of us are really cool with Jesus until it actually costs us something to do what he's asking us to do, which is what takes us into this last passage, the part that's right after this, which I think is one of the most difficult passages to grapple with in all of the New Testament. And it's Mark chapter 8, starting at verse 34. He says, it's called the way of the cross in the version I'm reading. Then he called the crowd to him along with the disciples, and he said, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? I think there's a couple ways that you can look at this, but I don't think there's any way that you can look at this selfishly. There's a variety of unselfish ways that you can look at it. I think the first way is that we oftentimes have plans, and when our plans don't coincide with God's plans, we have a choice to make. Do we adapt ourselves to meet with God's plans, or do we ask God to make his plans match ours? And that latter one sounds so stupid on its face, right? Like, who are you to ask the cosmic ruler and creator of the universe to adapt his plans to match your plan? Like, who are you? You might be really important. Like, you might be somebody as important as Mark Hibbelink or Yolani Hernandez or Kyle Walker or Kimberly Masters. You might be that important, but even if you're that important, you still have no right to go to God and ask him to adapt his plans. You might be the ruler of the known world, but you still don't have the right to ask God to adapt his plans to match your plans. And yet we do it all the time. We do it all the time. And when we're in a situation like this, when we're in a situation where we're being asked to do things that we don't want to do, when we're being asked to stay home and do the Superman cough, like when we're being asked to stay away from each other, keep social distancing, and for some of us, when we're being asked to do risky things like serving populations that are marginalized, or going out and helping people be tested for this disease, when you're a frontlines worker at community care or at Sunrise or heck, HEB, like when you're a frontlines person that's being asked by your society to do something that's difficult and dangerous, like how do you respond? Hopefully not like in a way that's not safe, but are you willing to respond in a way that is faithful? The first message that we had in this series, I said this phrase, and somebody picked up on it that said, faithfulness is not sexy. I mean, it's sexy to some people, like, right? Like, the older you get, like, the more you value faithfulness in your partner as, like, their most important trait. But I think for most people, faithfulness is not sexy. Like we don't wake up in the morning and be like, I would really love to be faithful today. Like, I would really love to do what's asked of me. I would really love to be obedient. I don't wake up saying that. I'm guessing you don't wake up saying that either. But, you know, the thing that comes with following God is that oftentimes you're not going to get to be the star. Oftentimes you're not going to get to be the glamorous person. Oftentimes you're not going to get to be super, super fulfilled all the time. A lot of times it's going to come down to God's plan trumping your plan. And if God's plan trumps your plan, if the way the world is working is not consistent with the way that you want the world to work, then what do? Do you allow God to interact with you in such a way that you adapt your plan to His? And if that's the case, you actually find your way into a whole lot of blessing. I think one of the things that we're all realizing is that the more that we stay in this new reality of the world, the more we actually realize it's kind of a blessing. Like there's kind of some really nice things about it. And I think that's true no matter what you do. If you adapt your plan to God's, you're going to see different ways where your life is impacted in a positive way because you didn't do things the way that you wanted to do them. I know when I do things the opposite of the way that I want to do them, oftentimes that's where I experience the most joy and the most grace and the most love. And so I would encourage you to think about this week, how is this reality that you're now in, how is this world that has now been compacted into your living room, how is this new situation that you found yourself in called you to act in a different way, called you to submit to God in a different way, but also how has it started to bless you? And how have you started to see God better? How have you started to enjoy following God better and having a better sense of communion with Him? I'm going to encourage you to think through that, and hopefully you find better ways of doing that as you go throughout these next few weeks of being quarantined. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are a God who loves us, that you are a God who cares for us, that you are a God who has a plan that is bigger than the plans that we have. And so I thank you that you have allowed us to experience this part of human history, that we get to see what it looks like for the world to respond in a difficult situation and what it looks like for each of us to respond in a difficult situation. I pray, Lord, that we would be the kind of people who are up to the task of listening and adapting ourselves to you and to your plan. And Lord, I pray that you would guide us as we follow you to find joy and find blessing in everyday quarantine circumstances that sometimes might not be exciting, they might not be sexy, but they are the kind of things that draw us closer to you. And so we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Come on back, team. You guys know that at the end we have a few features that we do at the end of our broadcast, and I'm going to let Kyle do all of these. Go ahead. You want to announce what are the closing things that we're going to do today? The first one is the comments, right?
Yeah. So the first thing is we're going to go ahead and read off. There have been lots of hilarious comments coming through during this whole time we've been together. We have taken the most funny yet PG-13 rated.
That's important.
That's important.
Keep watching.
That's right. That we could read because they're all pretty darn funny. So why don't you read one first?
This one came from Ronnie. Are you somehow sanitizing money? It's probably the dirtiest thing out there. I can think of a lot more dirtier things. I don't think we can sanitize.
Could you tell us about them, Yolanda? Tell us about the
No,
dirty
this
things
is
that you're thinking of.
Okay. So I don't think we can sanitize money just yet.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you. And then from Trish,
Hold on, I have an idea. Could we launder the money? Would that help if we laundered the money?
Yes, but that's not legal.
Okay.
PG-13 mark.
Sorry.
And then one of my favorites is Trish said, I knew he was going to say cojones. And I think that's awesome.
Did you spell it right? Because cojones has a J in it.
Well, it was phonetic.
Okay.
Kimberly wrote it down phonetically for my benefit.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Trish, cojones is with a J. J. So anyhow, and then the winner goes to...
This is a two-part one. Trish says, Randy, is Mark named after a gospel? I'm a preacher's kid, and my brother's names are Timothy, Thomas, and David. Randy replies, he's actually named after my dork college roommate. Sort of. Also found out his middle name is William.
I would just like to say, because I was given a comment here, that my favorite comment was actually from Harry C., all the way from Louisville, Kentucky, who said, what's the over-under on how many F-bombs Kyle drops during this church service? And the answer is 0. So someone's going to be paying out. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, the service is not done yet, but we're pretty impressed with you.
That's right.
And yeah, okay.
So, let's see. What else do we have? Oh, let's go ahead and read what song we should karaoke. Oh, barely squeaking by.
So close.
So close is God is Bigger Than the Boogeyman.
All right.
Wins by only 6%.
All right. So we're going to bring in we've had people in our studio audience here, not very many, but we're going to invite them to come on stage. And our most special guest here is our good friend Florian, and we are so glad that Florian is here. And so we're going to sing this song together. We're going to karaoke this. I don't hope that wherever you are at home, you're going to sing this with him. I love this, by the way, because this is one of my favorite songs when I was growing up. And I cannot believe that Celine Dion got defeated by the VeggieTales. That is absolutely unreal.
I think it was my very stern head shaking.
Your very stern head shaking. Mason, come on.
Come on.
Okay, we're gonna sing "God Is Bigger Than the Boogeyman." Cassie, you want to come sing with me,
bud? And FYI, we're only at 9 people. We are following orders.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Woohoo! Everybody ready? We're gonna crank this up as loud as we possibly can.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. It's gonna be on. Oh, hold on. We got the ad. Hold on. The video's going to play after the ad plays here. Okay.
We're all used to this, right?
Yeah.
All of it.
Oh,
Absolutely.
This is actually not the right song. Let's see.
Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. Look at that. It's his first search.
Yeah, I searched for this song a lot. All right, here we go.
That's awesome.
See if we get the ad on this one. Nope. Lying in my bed, and the furniture starts creeping. Laugh and say, I cut that out and get back to my sleep, because I know that God's the biggest and He's watching all the while. So when I get scared, I'll think of Him and close my eyes and smile. Wait for it. God is bigger than the boogeyman. He's bigger than Godzilla or the monsters on TV. Oh, God is bigger than the boogeyman, and He's watching out for you and me. Are you frightened? Oh, really? Are you worried? Not a bit. I know never's gonna happen, that God can handle it. I'm sorry that I scared you when I saw me on TV. Well, that's okay, because now I know that God is taking care of me. God is bigger than the boogeyman. He's bigger than Godzilla or the monsters on TV. Oh, God is bigger than the boogeyman, and He's watching out for you and me. God is bigger than the boogeyman. He's bigger than Godzilla or the monsters on TV. Oh, God is bigger than the boogeyman, and He's watching out for you and me. He's watching out for you and me. He's watching me. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! All right. Now, as you guys know, we usually have our Mark's tips for surviving the apocalypse, and I figured that if at the end to have Mark's tips for surviving the apocalypse, we actually have a nurse here today, and so I'm going to allow Yolani to actually give you today's tips for surviving the apocalypse. Yolani, go.
Social distancing. Follow the rule from Austin. 10 people or less, but 6 feet apart if you can. And the next big thing is hand washing. That's huge. Cover your cough. Make sure you wipe down your surfaces. Oh, somebody just turned on the lawnmower. Or is that the? Yeah, for sure, hand washing. Also, stock up on beans. I love beans. Just don't take the ones I like from H-E-B, the red ones. And now we're gonna do that. All right. So speaking of washing, now we're gonna do something to Mark that is gonna be fun. So follow us outside.
next week.